Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation. I couldn't even remember what I literally just hung up my last podcast. That's why I was like, which one am I doing? Which one am I doing? Freedom Nation, baby. Freedom Nation.
Yep.
This is awesome. The podcast that gets me in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, well, just think if we'd actually posted all the things we've recorded.
Oh, gosh, dude. Well, I don't know if you've noticed this. I don't know if you follow me on Facebook, but I've almost gone dark on Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's because I realized, you know what? First of all, I live behind enemy lines. All they got to do is accuse me of stuff, and they can come take away all my guns without due process in the state. They can do whatever they want. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to shut up. I'm not going to piss off anyone on Facebook. Get me out of the state, get me to freedom. And even then, I'll probably not be posting on Facebook anymore because I'm like, I already got a target on me, man. Why am I making it worse?
Man. I know. So I don't know if this makes you feel better or worse, but so I'm in a PhD intensive this weekend, next week. It's 2 of them. And so I am with brilliant scholarly people. I would say many of them much smarter than me, taking doctoral classes, and pretty much everybody seems to be on the same page as us. If they're not, they're close. And like at lunch today, we brought somebody over to our side who was already sympathetic, but like we're talking about some of this stuff and he's like, yeah, you guys got a point. And I'm like, yeah, we do. And so it's always funny when you're talking to somebody and I make a couple of, comments, and it's like when Christians are finding out if another Christian drinks alcohol and you make very vague comments until you kind of make eye contact and you're like, yes, we're on the same page. And so that happened with one of these guys. And then we immediately started like gathering everyone around us. One of the dudes is living in your state, but is a refugee from, not a refugee. He's now a citizen from a communist country. Yeah. And he had he's like, yeah, with you guys 100%. And yeah, he's like, I need to make some guns. And he's like, but I'm in California. And I'm like, then you need to get out of California, son. So, but wonderful time, man.
I actually decided, I don't know if I told you this, but I told someone else, I'm not buying any more guns until I get to my new free state. And then I will never buy from an FFL ever again. Not because I have anything against the FFL. It's just, I'm going to be in a new state that unless they go check what I bought in California, they won't know what I have. And I can make my guns again. And I'm going to go back to making guns and private party transfers. I mean, that's where I'm heading.
Dilly, brother. That's awesome. Yeah. Good for you, man. Very good.
So anyway, this is what I was going to share with Dan before this podcast started. So Donald Trump Jr., who's always posting on Instagram, and I honestly can't believe he hasn't been banned from the platform. I mean, I'm sure he gets in trouble all the time. So he writes, hey, Ashley Parker, the author of this article, the crowd was chanting F Joe Biden, not let's go Brandon. There's a video of it all over the place. Your sloppy reporting is a real problem. So here's the article. He takes a screenshot of it and shares it. The former president's son, Donald Trump Jr., has repeatedly promoted the meme and the original chant on his social media feeds. At a speech in Georgia, he took the stage after the crowd had been chanting USA, USA, and roared. And he says, there's a couple of other chants I've been hearing going around. Have you heard the other one that's been going around? The crowd took the crew and broke out into cries of let's go Brandon. She actually writes that, right? Well, maybe she didn't, because another screenshot he's got is, this is the greatest correction in the history of journalism. Thanks, Washington Post. And so the correction is, a previous version of this article incorrectly said a crowd broke into a let's go Brandon chant during a Donald Trump Jr. speech in Georgia. The crowd broke into a F Joe Biden chant at that speech in September. The error, which was inserted by an editor, has been corrected. So it sounds like it wasn't even the author. It was the people in charge at the Washington Post who were like, oh, we got to fix this. Let's go, Brandon. But like, do people, are they really that stupid? Do they think we don't know what people are chanting when we can see the football game or the NASCAR rally or whatever it is and everyone's yelling the same thing? Do you not think we know what they're saying? It's not let's go, Brandon. That's not it.
Well, and what's fun is it's almost like the big ice shelter stuff where we just appropriate new language. And so now let's go, Brandon means F Joe Biden. Yes. And so it's beautiful because it's like, oh, now we can say this anywhere we want, right? Anytime we want, and they can't say anything about it. And it's just hilarious. Oh my god! Kind of
like that guy who you posted in our Telegram group, which by the way, you guys got to get into that. What's the number? 850-990-2020. I think that's what it is.
And then you got to think
keyword hero.
Yep.
But you post this meme in there, this guy who stopped the armed robbery in the grocery store. He's a vet, Marine vet. And he stops this guy who comes in with a gun and just basically is like, what? Boom, takes him out, starts hitting him and whatnot. And the gal is interviewing him on live TV. And at the end, he goes, oh, yeah, thanks so much for having me. And by the way, Epstein didn't kill himself. And the reporter just starts laughing because what are you going to do? It's on live TV.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, I'm glad awesome. We still got people keeping the news alive, man. We got to make that happen. We got to tell that story. Put it on your Christmas cards, kids.
Ooh, I like that. Throw it on the Christmas cards.
Maybe the reality is
I send them out to all my clients. Maybe I should.
I put it on my Christmas cards. I hashtagged them and I did it in small font so that nobody would notice it. And put them out like that. No problem. And then I would send it to people and I'd be like, hey, did you get your card? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, did you see the message? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, look at the bottom. And it looks just like small print, like the printing company did some kind of a copyright. And then they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yeah, buddy. So
see, I don't know if I'd want to put it small. I think I would just offend my wife, but I kind of want it to be, but I like the hashtag Epstein didn't kill himself.
Mm-hmm. I put it that and taxation is theft. It was good times. Oh. Yeah. So yeah, maybe I should wait until next year when I'm in a free state, and people will be like, "Oh, Pete really lost it now." I'll be like, "Yeah, Pete really lost it." Yep. Oh, you could put "Let's Go Brandon" on there, man.
No, that one I wouldn't put on there.
So I have a client who put "Let's Go Brandon" on their sign at their place of business, which I thought was great. They put it on the sign. I think they got only positive reactions because of the type of client it is. So they were going to do, they're doing a digital billboard out on like the main interstate. And so I designed like 10 billboard designs for them. And I put that on 2 of them and they got nixed. And I understand because they're like, it was going to go from hundreds of people seeing it to thousands of people seeing it. And they're like, I don't know that we want to put that heat on. And I'm like, it's cool, man. I understand. But I was like, just see if you want to do it. It'd be great. So
that'd be kind of funny, man.
It would be.
Because I already know what store it is. I can already tell.
You already know.
By your incognito telling of the story. I'm like, oh, yeah. I could see why that would resonate with the clientele.
Yeah.
I get it.
And I also understand why they're not wanting to bring extra heat on themselves. I'm totally. Oh, yeah. I get it. Yeah. So good. You're
in a fairly red state though, aren't you? Or is it
Ohio? Yes, we're in a pretty red area there. And Ohio is mostly a red state, but we don't always go red. And so it's I wouldn't call it purple. I would say we're very reddish purple. Right. It's not a done deal in Ohio. So
it was funny. I was talking to my realtor out there in Texas, and one of her first lines to me, she goes, "By the way, when you're out here, do not hesitate to tell people where you stand politically, because they don't like people from California, but they'll be okay when they hear your point of view.
That's exactly right.
I'm like, oh yeah, I already got that down. I already know what my speech is. My spiel would be, hey, look, I'm fleeing that stuff. I'm not bringing it with me. Don't worry. I'm not one of those Californians.
Yeah. How crazy it is how many of the people though that are leaving and don't realize that they're taking with them the ideology that caused the problem in the first place. And I think
a lot of it is because of the I think a lot of it comes down to social issues. They believe, just like I believe, very strongly in certain social issues. And each side has kind of adopted what they're going to hold on to as their social issue. And you fail to see, okay, but the rest of the policy outside of those issues right there is leading us down this dark hole that's going to end with the destruction of America from the left side. But I get you're holding on to, let's say they're pro-abortion, and well, okay, you're not going to, unfortunately, you find too much of that in the Republican Party. It used to be very anti-abortion, but I get it. Okay, that's your social issue. The problem is all that financial crap that they're doing too, the entitlements, all that, it's taking down the country. So, I get why they're in that tough position, and that's why they take it with them, right? Because it's really because of the social issues. How many of us vote based on fiscal issues, like you and I might? But I'd say that's not the average person, because they're not even thinking about that. It's like, social stuff.
And they vote on a social issue usually based on what's the right way to say? There's an obtuse way in which, like, they've been told to think a certain way, and so many have not thought it through. And I think the abortion issue is a great example. I've had conversations with pro-choice people that you just ask certain questions and they're like, never have thought about it. Like, they've parroted my body, my choice. And then when you ask a few questions that get them to think about, like, well, okay, but what about the fact that the baby has a different set of DNA? And I recognize this is not the main topic of our
right.
podcast or anything, but they've not thought it through. And they're like, they're at times shocked. And so you have this discussion where they're shaken. And I'm like, that's like the second thing you learn being pro-life. And like, the fact that they've not thought of that means that they're being catechized by a very shallow ideology, which then also doesn't take into account, okay, well, is this person that I'm voting for actually going to do this? Are they just virtue signaling what's going to happen? And then we see that happening even in the pro-gun guys, where they're like, well, I'm voting for Trump because he's pro-gun. And I'm like, yeah, but what about, the bump stock ban? And they're like, what? I'm like, well, he used an executive order. Like, and they haven't thought through, like, they've been categorized to say this equals this. And it's like, well, think about it some, man. Like, it's not always what you think it is. Right. So anyway, neither here nor there, but we've got, the Let's Go Brandon thing is a fun phenomenon. And
it started at a NASCAR race with the reporter trying to be quick on their feet. Oh, they're not saying what we all hear. They're saying, let's go Brandon. It's like, yeah, really? Who's this Brandon guy? Huh?
Yeah.
That everyone's going to be chanting for Brandon.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so distinctive that it was not saying that.
No, it's why would I trust you to tell me the truth when you're obviously lying and don't care? Like, this is the problem with the media. Like, we can't trust you either side. I don't trust Fox News one bit, at all. And why would I trust Fox News when they're just as bad as CNN? Like, CNN's almost a little bit more open about it. Like, they're almost like, hey, we're totally lying over here. And Fox News is like, we're fair and balanced, but we're totally lying to you over here. It's like, I don't trust either one of them.
I don't either. Well, and I don't know if you saw the reporting on the Netflix walkout. Did you see this?
I didn't see the reporting on it. I heard about it, but I didn't see the reporting on it.
It was interesting to see Ben Shapiro specifically addressed the reporting on the Netflix walkout in contrast to the reporting on the WNBA parade, using that term very loosely. And I don't know if you saw these two things. So one, they make a big deal out of this walkout at Netflix, and they're protesting, Dave Chappelle's anti-trans stuff. And it turns out, like, I mean, it was a handful of people. They said dozens. You look at the video, and it's just not very many people. Like, it's just not. And so you think about, like, how many thousands of people work for Netflix, and it's like, this is barely anything. It's not a big deal. It's not like there's this big crowd protesting, and nobody cares, right? But they make it like this is huge, and Netflix got to worry, and Netflix is on the wrong side of history, and look at all these people that are upset, and it's like, it's not that many people. Who cares? And also, like, way more people were upset about the cuties fiasco, and you didn't really report on that or even make a scene about it, right? So then he contrasts that with here. So the media is trying to make it look like there's a whole bunch of people outraged at Netflix. And then they report on, I don't know if you saw, like, the video of apparently it's the Chicago Sky, which I'd never heard of. It's a WNBA team. The WNBA is essentially feminist affirmative action for basketball, and totally affirm they can play basketball. Good for them. But nobody really cares about the WNBA. And so here, apparently they've won some big championship, and there's a parade. Well, there's more people on the buses of the parade than there are watching the parade, right? And I don't know if you're familiar, but, like, the NBA subsidizes the WNBA.
Oh, really?
So they're trying to make a big deal out of, look at this, look at people coming out for this parade, and yay. And then you look at it and you're like, there's nobody there. Like, so you're trying to make it look like the WNBA is a big deal. It's not. It's only there because it's being subsidized by the NBA. And then you're trying to make it look like this other thing is a big deal when it's not. And it's like you're really not accurately reporting any of this. And it tells you everything you need to know, because not only are they reporting something and either falsifying, they're making a deal out of nothing, right? But on top of it, they're trying to do it related to a socialization issue. It's like, people care about this, so you should too, when neither of these things are things that people care about. Anyway, that's thought that was interesting. Ben Shapiro's take on it was worthwhile.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very, very interesting to me, because I kind of thought about this when they were making a big deal out of the women's soccer, how they're not paid as much as men's soccer. And I'm like, okay, but in the business world, it's not about being fair. Like, it's kind of supply and demand. Like, if the demand is there and there's only so many soccer players, guess what? They make more money. The demand isn't there as much. Now, it's there for women's soccer. It's not there that much, not as much as men's. So it's kind of like, yes, of course you're going to make less. And no, it's not going to be even. And that's more of a business real world thing than, I don't see it as genderism or whatever the racial term is for gender inequality. I don't see it as that. It's like, no, this is just like, you can't manufacture demand. You just can't. I have no problem with the WNBA. I don't like the NBA. I'm not going to watch the WNBA. I don't like either one of them. So it's like, I don't really care that it exists. I don't care that. I think it's great that people can make money in a sport doing something that they love. I love that. I love anything where people can make money doing what they love. I'm all for that. But guess what? It's not going to be as big as the other. The other one's been around for a long time. It's got fans. It's got following. I don't know how you create that in the WNBA.
Yeah. Well, and actually this was borrowing Shapiro's point, but one of his comments is, he's like, first of all, he's like, a good high school basketball team, boys team, could beat just about any WNBA team. He's like, think about, like, it's not a big deal for high school basketball team for a couple of dunks to happen in a game. But when a woman dunks in the WNBA, it's like, oh my, somebody dunked. And it's like, that gives you an idea of, like, the level of play. And they're better than I am. No problem. Like, totally affirm they're good. But, like, it's just not going to be as interesting because they're not as good as the men. And it's just the excitement and everything is just not the same. And that's coming from, like,
honestly, I see it more as a fan base thing. Like, if enough women were really into basketball, and specifically women's basketball, then it's quite possible that it could be as big. But that has more to do with the fans. Like, if the fan base isn't there, it's not there. I mean, you can work on it from a marketing standpoint to build it up over time, but you just got to realize it takes time to build that sort of thing up. In theory, they could be as big as men if you worked on getting the desire of the clientele up. I just don't know that there's enough women that are truly, sports fanatics. The reason why they always joke about it being a stereotype that men always watch sports and the women hate it because the men are always watching the sports. It's a stereotype for a reason, because there's a lot more men who are watching sports than women. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to take more women to push the WNBA forward.
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. Even if they do, I'm not sure that women are going to be more excited about watching WNBA.
I don't know that either. That's what I'm saying. They would have to not just be really into basketball, but really into women's basketball.
Yeah. And it's just a narrow subset. And you're right. It's all an issue of supply and demand. So, yes. So speaking of supply and demand, we should talk about guns. I don't know if you guys have noticed, guns are still selling like a lot.
Yeah.
Ammo is still really expensive. And so I'm really curious to see some of these supply chain issues. It's a real issue. I think some of it's manufactured, but how these supply chain issues are going to affect ammo prices again, because it's already still a nightmare. So I'm blaming I'm praying imprecatory prayers on our leaders for the problems that we're having related to all of this, including the ammo shortage. So anyway, yeah, I don't know. That's lots going on here, man.
Yeah, I find all of it very interesting, because I've always said that to me, it made way more sense to sell ammo and gun parts than it does to sell guns. Like, I have no idea what the margin is on a firearm, but I know it's not that much.
It's not much at all.
Yeah. So it's like, okay. And then once you buy the firearm, in theory, it's not like you need more firearms like you and I do. we always need more firearms. Yeah. But in theory, it's like, okay, maybe you got your 1 or your 2 or your 3 guns. It's like, okay, but what do you need continuously? It's the ammo. Like, that makes more sense to me why someone would want to go into the ammunition business rather than the firearms business, because you could develop clientele. Like a famous ammo supplier is LAX Ammo out here in California. I mean, my co-host on the the Thriving Christian Business podcast, he buys ammo from LAX, and he's in Florida. He's like, it's the cheapest place I can get it. So he buys it from LAX Ammo. Like, you could develop a clientele that keep coming back to you over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes more sense to me from a business standpoint.
It's pretty cool, man. Well, that's what I think of. I mean, we talk about this in business where I want to essentially sell to a customer to turn them into a client. Like, the game, in a good way, is that I want to sell them to them again and again and again. And that's why monthly subscriptions. And so I think about, like, what would it be like to have an ammo subscription where, like, not only are you getting an ammo to your doorstep, or, getting ammo to your doorstep on a regular basis, but then you have this, like, incentive to shoot it. It's like drinking coffee. It's like, well, better finish this one up because I got new ones coming in the morning. I think we're on to something. Of course, our
combine that with a training aspect. So that way you could charge more per month, but it comes with so many training classes.
I like it.
And you get the ammo because you're going to need it in the training classes. But the problem with ammo being so expensive right now would almost make it just unbearable. Like, most people, I don't think would do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be able to do it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh man. So it's funny because our best episodes are when we get mad at something. Pete, what are you mad about today?
I don't know that I'm mad about anything right now.
I think that's my problem. I am having a really good day. And I had a rant over lunch where we talked through a lot of this stuff. And I mean, it was one of those conversations where I turned my phone off because of the type of things we were talking about. And I'm in a state that is not far at this present moment from our nation's capital. And so I'm like, I feel like there's probably going to be feds all around. And so I'm looking all around and I'm like, there's probably feds here. So anyway, I'm afraid I got a lot of it out of my system. So I'm not mad enough for our podcast today, Pete. I'm sorry. I need to be madder.
That's funny.
yeah, today I'm like, man, let's just chill. And I was mad already. I got it all out of my system. But let me tell you, it feels good to talk to like-minded people. And I tell you what, there's a whole lot more of us. And the ones that have just been like, I don't know, doesn't take too much conversation before we brought them over. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, so you need to build an AR, don't you? Yeah, I do. I'm like, praise the Lord, brother. So always a good time talking about building ARs, talking about getting people, Dude, living off
counting
grid.
The days, man. I've already got my plane ticket to Texas. At least the family and I are going. We're gonna go scout out some locations. I don't know that we'll end up in Texas. I would say it's probably about a 90% chance we will. It's honestly not my first choice, but it's the one I think I can get my family to. And at this point, that's what I'm looking for. What will my family actually do? Yeah. And I'll take that. So
right on,
I'm
man.
Looking forward to it, man.
That's cool, man. You're gonna have a good time. I was talking to somebody who's got land in Arkansas, and he's like, we're in a pretty good spot here. And I'm like, Arkansas. Hadn't thought of Arkansas. He had a couple of other states.
I still won't think of Arkansas. Like there are certain states, they're off the list. They'll never be on the list. Arkansas, that's one of them. Yeah.
Well, you have Texas is probably going to be your compromise state for your wife.
It is exactly. And I fully realize Texas is turning blue. It'll turn blue probably in the next 8 years is what I'm giving it. Florida, I think it's got less time, maybe 4 years before it turns blue. The way I look at it right now, we're in a Cold War. I'm afraid, I don't want it to, but I'm afraid it's going to end up going to a civil war. And honestly, when that happens, I just don't want to be alone. Right now, I'm alone. I'm outgunned. I'm outmanned. We got Black Ops who goes, hey, I'm only 30 minutes away. Dude, 30 minutes is about 30 minutes too far. It's like, that ain't backup. You coming to pick up my body. You coming to claim it at the morgue. I mean, that's all that is. So I want to have neighbors who are of like mind and know that we can rally together and protect each other. That's what I want. I want to be able to protect myself. That I can still get, even if they turn blue.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of people like that in Texas. You're exactly right. Well, this is where, and this is the thing we've stressed. We haven't talked about this in a while, but the idea of the Minutemen concept that like I'm going to be ready to protect my family and my neighbors. And so to do that, and this is interesting. I was actually talking to a military guy who, let's just say, he's got real experience, and also was in intelligence for a while. And one of the things he was saying is like, you don't need to be an operator. You need to be able to shoot in the right direction, be reasonably competent, and be willing to defend your family. Like it doesn't take that much. And he was going through like in history, like the ways that we've had, minorities have been able to defend themselves. And actually, I was listening to a thing on military strategy on my trip down here. It was really interesting. And they were actually talking about, obviously, Mao was an evil dictator, but his military strategy was this idea that like you can get the populace, even in a minority, to use basic weapons and defend themselves, and you can level up to a next level. Of course, he wasn't really trying to defend; he was trying to offend. But and only like 30% of the people were for the American Revolution. Think about like that was a minority. That was like, and yet we made it happen. And so you can be a minority, and you don't have to be awesome at guns to be able to defend yourself and your family. And so you get yourself a plate carrier, get yourself 300 rounds of mags, get yourself a 3-day loadout, get yourself a fighting weapon, and say 100 rounds even of, you should probably do more than 100 rounds of pistol ammo and a sidearm, and you're in a position to defend yourself. And you can spend not crazy money, and you can get yourself in a position to defend yourself and your family. And we're not talking about crazy overthrowing the government. We're talking about defending yourself, like when there's rioting. Like you can actually go and defend your neighbors, because the cops can't always get there. They can't always do what you need them to do. You are responsible to defend yourself. So we'll just we'll push that out, man. Plate carrier, 300 rounds, AR. Make sure that you can shoot it. Practice mag changes. Get a 3-day loadout in case you need to get home or get to somewhere else. You're good to go. Yeah. Public service announcement of the day.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, guys, this will be a short podcast today. Just do what Dan was saying. Get yourself your fighting weapon. Get trained on it, man. Take some training.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the number one thing I would tell you to do. My son is finally old enough to where I can take him to the range that's close to my house. And I was actually like, okay, maybe I haven't decided for sure if I'm going to do this, but I might hire the firearms instructor there, who I know is a good guy. We've had him on the podcast before, and have him train my son, because it might be better coming from someone other than me.
Right on,
I'm kind of thinking about, I want to make sure that he really gets this stuff cemented in his head, and hearing it from someone other than me might be what it takes. Gun safety, all that kind of stuff. Because this is a funny story, man. True story. We take him to our church for this meeting that they had. And so they were having all the kids play Nerf war. They all had all these Nerf guns. My son literally takes the gun, looks down the barrel, and shoots himself in the eye.
Oh.
And it wasn't the first time.
Oh, no.
And I was like,
I was about to say, well, he'll only do that once, but
no. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how I told you, because you did it before. Don't point a gun at your face. Like, I really don't want him taking one of my real firearms and looking down the barrel of it. It's like, no, I'm freaking out inside.
That needs to be a morale patch. I've told you once, because you've done it before. Don't point a gun at your face.
Oh man. But
anyway. So, hey, everybody, check out learms.net. Exciting things happening there. Lots of free downloads, lots of free stuff going on. Check them out. And, man, always be ready, Freedom Nation.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll talk to you all later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.